Yeah, no, running.
The funds we're going to give them, we have influence over how those funds are used. We just they're the library board itself.
I thought so. I was stretching over by the door watching it come in.
Anyway, I run always between work and work because otherwise I don't survive.
That's right. It's the same thing. I was in Newmarket anyway, so I figured I'll just grab a workout there and grab dinner, come here, and works out good.
Yeah, it does. Like I live in Newmarket. Yeah, so I live on in Grindway.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, well, yeah. We're still on the green space side, so it is good for us. And the development. So we actually are doing okay. Susan picked up my laptop.
You sure?
Yes. I swear, somebody just picked up my laptop and
I picked it up.
and you moved it?
No, I didn't. Well, I picked it up, realized it was yours, and then I saw you in here. I thought you knew it was out there.
Are you playing like?
John, I just read it before.
Am I the first one up today? Good stuff. Come on. So, Members of council, I can call this general committee meeting to order. It is now 7:04. Do we have any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Councillor Tom, Councillor Kim, any questions regarding the amended agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Next up is the determination of items requiring separate discussion. I will start on my left with Councillor Kim.
Items 2 and 14.
Thank you, Councillor Tom. Would you like us to come back to you, Councillor Tom?
Yeah, that'd be great, thank you.
Councillor Humphries?
May I have item 3 and 4?
3 and 4. Councillor Tom? Thank you. Councillor Abel?
Item 8.
Is that everything?
Yes, that's everything,
Thank you.
Councillor.
Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. Items 6, 7, and 11. And was number 9 pulled?
Not yet.
Oh. Number 9, please.
Thank you. Councillor Maracus?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Just to repeat, we have items 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, and 14 pulled for discussion for this evening. Are there any other items that council would like to consider?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is a delegation here tonight, an item,
No. Right.
With regards to
items 16 and 17.
we'll pull items 16 and 17. Thank you very much.
We don't, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, we don't need to, I'm just,
There's a delegation. Is there any desire to pull those items? Nope. That's fine then. Seeing no other items for discussion, can I now get a motion to adopt those items not requiring discussion? Councillor Kim, Councillor Gardner, all those in favor? Motion carried. The delegation items 16 and 17 were not pulled, they were approved on consent. First up, we have a presentation from Mr. Lang with regards to the Northern Six collaboration.
thanks.
Welcome, Mr. Lang.
Thank you very much.
I'll assume you've been made aware of your time limits?
Yes, I have. I'll be very brief and hopefully succinct.
Thank you very much. Go right ahead.
Yeah. So, good evening, and thank you very much to the Town of Aurora's General Committee for the chance to present an overview of this very exciting study I've had the chance to lead on behalf of the N6. Over the next few minutes, I will give a brief overview of the N6 partnership, provide some general thoughts on shared services, briefly outline the study undertaken, and give an overview of those future initiatives that will form the basis for our continued N6 collaboration. A little bit about me. My name is Glenn Lang, and I've been seconded from the region of York for a period of a year. My background is in strategic planning and continuous improvement, both in the public and private sector. The last 14 years I've been with York Region. Prior to that, I've been in the aerospace and industrial products distribution industries. I'm a certified facilitator, quality expert, and have a lot of background in project management, specifically when it comes to service delivery and program reviews of this type. So a little bit about the background of the N6 partnership. As you may know, the N6 is really a collaboration of the northern 6 municipalities of York Region. A joint CEOs group meets regularly, as does management and staff at the operational levels, with many cross-functional teams meeting regularly to share ideas, best practices, and so forth. The intent of this partnership really is to continue to strive to find better, innovative, and more cost-efficient ways to deliver our services. And this slide here just shows some recent collaborations amongst the N6. So the study, what was it all about? This study was conducted to provide a comprehensive third-party assessment of some future opportunities for collaboration amongst the N6. So looking to build upon the past successes from the partnership, this study recommends further ideas that can lead to additional cost savings and service improvements. It's important to know that fire services, libraries, and other funded boards were not part of the scope of this study. So just some words on shared services because they have different connotations. So for the sake of this study, we split that thinking into three groups. The first being networking and information sharing. So that's primarily focused around ideas of to increase the effectiveness of the working relations of the N6. So sharing things like policies, procedures, best practices, etc. As I mentioned, a lot of working groups already work together. The treasurers have a group that meet. Human resources get together regularly, Parks and Rec, planning, and public works, just to name a few of the areas that collaborate quite frequently amongst the N6. The second category are what we're calling partnerships and collaboration. So that's primarily focused around joint initiatives or collaboration on program delivery, resource sharing, etc. So joint procurement would be an example of this, and also the use of our internal audit as a shared resource amongst the N6 is a current example of some of the partnerships we have. Later in the presentation, you'll notice that most of the future priority initiatives that I'll be recommending fall into this category of thought. And then the third category we're calling the shared service delivery is just that traditional concept of consolidating a service or function into a single service delivery unit. So therefore, we pool resources from the municipalities to service two or more municipalities. Ideas in this area usually take a lot greater degree of change and formalization, but one of the successes you've had the pleasure of seeing here is an example would be the Central York Fire Service is a current example of a shared service model, what pooled resources serve more than one municipality. So the steps taken in this study, step one was for myself to meet the senior management and key staff from throughout all the N6. Met with over 40 individuals, and the ideas that I generated from those discussions that were common to most or all the municipalities were then put on a preliminary list to further explore. 51 items made that preliminary list. As a next step, that preliminary list was then assessed by a CEO advisory team, we called it, which was myself and representatives from across the 6 municipalities. That team developed a comprehensive evaluation criteria that assessed each one of the 51 ideas in 5 ways. We looked at potential cost efficiencies, service improvement possibilities, the ease at which the idea could be implemented, the extent to which the idea maximizes current resources, and we also looked at the impact the idea might have on other service units or external stakeholders. So we assessed those in 5 ways, and what the municipalities did is they went back and assessed those individually, consistently, and then we looked at them together as a collective N6. And we did that to try to determine what areas of common interest and benefit there were. The priority areas were then recommended to a CEO's group, and those priorities are in the process of being further developed with each idea. So after the evaluation, these are the recommended areas, priority areas for focus of the N6 collaborations. I'll go through each one just very quickly. The joint procurement has a great potential for savings, so it's recommended that the N6 continue with the waste management insurance contracts. Exploring joint procurement for horticultural services is also recommended, especially for tree replacement, given has become very prevalent due to the emerald ash borer. Another idea for recommendation is additional joint procurements in public works. Currently, there's over 20 contracts that are related service or supply contracts that are similar to some or all of the municipalities. So ideas around snow plowing, street sweeping, streetlight maintenance, etc., those are ones that could possibly be looked at together as an N6. Currently, some of the areas already use a common vendor, so actually bringing them into a joint procurement and going to market it as one can potentially result in some cost savings. Sorry about that. The town of Georgina, I just have a few more quickly. The town of Georgina has recently agreed to lead a study to look at options for animal shelters and control services too. So one of the options there could be include joint delivery amongst the N6. The sharing of specialized maintenance equipment, equipment such as reach trucks and vacuum trucks, street sweepers, etc., that might not be available to all municipalities. We believe there's an opportunity there to be more cost-effective and possibly increase our service response time. And the same can be said for the sharing of specialized facilities such as maintenance facilities, expertise such as HVAC and electricians and plumbers, etc. Just quickly, too, the idea of a common asset approach. The thought there is to leverage some shared expertise, resources in this field, and possibly develop common systems amongst the N6 to use for asset management. And lastly, one of the ideas was a common approach to septic maintenance inspection. Changes to provincial legislation in January 1st of 2016 require an enhanced maintenance and inspection for private septic systems. So exploring this would be opportune at this time. And lastly, just some other initiatives to consider here. I'm not going to go through the exhausted list, but if you did have questions, I'd be happy to answer them specifically for each one of these. These ideas could be considered sort of the B list of the study, so it's recommended that after the priorities of the previous list have been implemented, these other initiatives here can be considered sort of as a future wave for N6 collaboration. And then as far as the next steps, I will be sharing this presentation with the councils of all 6 municipal partners over the next few weeks. And as well, the cross-municipal working groups will begin to undertake some key work over the next few months to further detail each initiative, discuss and resolve any implementation challenges they may have between the municipalities, and come to a consensus of an overall plan or roadmap to execute these ideas. So with that, I just want to thank you for your time today and say how great it was to work with your CEO, Neil Garby, his senior staff and management throughout the study. I really enjoyed my experience working here at the town of Aurora and throughout the N6. So thank you very much, and be happy to field any questions or comments you may have now.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Can I get a motion to receive the presentation? Councillor Marcus, Councillor Abel, any questions of the delegate? Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation coming here, Mr. Lang. I just had one question. I was just wondering why consolidation of fire service was not explored. Like, why was that aspect of it not involved in this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the scope of the study was actually given to me before I undertook it, so the exact particulars of why fire was excluded, I'm not sure. I could make a comment from my, I guess, personal experience of exploring the many ideas that came out. Exploring even more fire libraries, etc., would be, I would think, extremely resource dependent. So myself being one person could have been one of the reasons that it was thought to actually keep down the scope, but I don't know if Mr. Garby would like to add to that, or if that's pretty much my knowledge.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that was one of the reasons that it was very labor-intensive to look at the nuances of the different services, and it's really part of a separate entity. There was also some sensitivities from some of the other municipalities about looking at that and some of the issues that may arise through collective agreements and so on, so that we thought that would complicate the study fairly significantly, as well as libraries. They have their own structure and their own system, and they're independent, arm's length, so we felt it better to allow the libraries to look at synergies if they choose, and then focus on the things that are more directly within our control, and look at those administrative things. So we could look further down the line at fire consolidation if it was directed by council or some other body.
I guess just...
Mr. Marcus?
Yeah, I guess it's something better for us at JCC to look into, so thank you.
Any further? Councilor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. The animal shelter and animal control, there's been a lot of discussion around this table, I don't think recently, but in the past, about shared facilities. Are you talking about it? Is there planning for it? Where are we at with that?
Mr. Lang?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'll tell you as much as I know from the study that we've undertaken and what we're doing. It was an idea, such as many others that came on the table for N6 collaboration and partnership. Currently, Georgina, Newmarket, East Gwynbury, and Richard Stouffville share a similar type arrangement currently. That arrangement is again getting to the point where it needs to be reviewed, and the thought was that some of the options could be reviewed, again, bringing in the entire N6 as an option for review. So I guess the best way I would answer that is this and all initiatives don't necessarily require the participation of all the partners at the table, but when we do explore the initiatives, we like to explore them with all partners at the table, and then decisions can be made as to whether it's feasible for each individual municipality.
Thank you. And has there ever been an exploration of EMS dispatch, emergency medical service dispatch, coming into York Region and out of Barrie? Or is that something outside the scope of the N6?
Mr. Lang?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. It wasn't part of the scope of this. Our scope actually restricted to existing services that we currently provide within the municipalities, and actually didn't look at expansion or enhancement of any other services.
Thank you.
I have Councillor Humphreys next, then Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. And just a couple of questions. If you can just touch upon a couple of points under joint initiatives: greater leverage existing call center infrastructure and expertise. Was the thought process around it just understanding how each other's municipalities handle this type of incoming call requirements? And is there a thought process in amalgamating those, or just taking best practices from that?
Mr. Lang?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Really, some of the ideas around the call centers included things like enhancement possibly for after-hours inquiries, service requests for municipalities that just give some additional options, and even using each other's call centers as possible emergency backups. So it was those sort of things. It wasn't, the ideas were really around the sharing of best practices and some backup capabilities of the infrastructure, not necessarily consolidating them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it's great. I love that idea. I think it's great, and it's a great way to prepare for any DR situations. The other one, just a quick one, it's probably similar to that, is the centralized distribution and processing of taxation and water billing. Is that just to compare how, again, best practice approach, or sharing that type of tool, service?
Yes, oh, sorry. Yep. Through you, Mr. Chair. That was an interesting one. That basically falls under that third category of thought, where we'd actually pool resources and therefore distribute service one or more municipalities using a pooled resource. That idea did make the B list for a few reasons. One was it just thought that maybe some of the other initiatives were more immediate, and that for the general thought is that taxation water billing is generally working well now, so there wasn't an immediate need to change, but that is something that was looked at upon as a possible efficiency and going forward.
Excellent. Then one last question, Mr. Chair, just, and you may not be able to answer this, but the benefits, like the benefits from of a improved expenditure, reduced expenditure for our municipality, is there any ideas, any, high-level views of what that could do for us, even percentage-wise?
Through you, Mr. Chair, at the time, we wouldn't be able to accurately quantify the exact values of these, but once the working groups discuss and develop more details, I guess we'd have a comprehensive idea of both the costs and the payback. So I think once you know cost and payback, it'd be better to then analyze the true savings. I guess it's suffice to say, though, that the advisory team that we worked on this agreed that all the ideas that you saw on the priority list have very good potential for cost savings or cost avoidance. So the exact amounts, I would be remiss to guess upon at this time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. And I guess that's, for me, it obviously is a great initiative. It's the right thing moving forward to make the investment, and the ROI we'll hopefully soon find out once it gets rolling.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the presentation. It's welcome news around budget time to find cost savings. I noticed in the joint initiatives you listed for the NSEX to consider, we have a snow removal challenge here, and I think it's shared on some of the other municipalities, and I've often said a snow smelter would be a piece of operational equipment that you might share amongst the other municipalities, so I thought I would just kind of bring that up. You have meetings with the CAOs in the Northern Six you referred to, and someone asked me about a month back, are those meetings public? And the agendas and minutes or anything along those lines?
Mr. Ryan? Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure I could answer that one. You're specifically speaking about the N6 CEOs that get together?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you...
Perhaps I'll direct that to Mr. Garvey.
Yeah.
The question is, are those meetings open to the public?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they're actually staff meetings, so they are not open to the public.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And on that same page, and I'm referring to page 4 on this item at the bottom, I noticed that recent collaborations among the N6 include sharing the internal audit, and I think we just saw BDO here today, so I'm aware of that, and employee benefits, I'm aware of. The joint training, learning, and development activities, could you maybe just highlight the return on investment on something along those lines?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Were you commenting on the return on investment from the recent collaborations on this page? Yeah.
Just so we could kind of share and get an idea of, there's always a benefit in what we're doing.
Sure.
Obviously, when we're doing insurance rates, there's a benefit to get good coverage at a good rate. So those are obvious, but something along joint training, learning, and development.
Yeah, as part of the study, through you, Mr. Chair, as part of the study, I didn't necessarily quantify some of the recent collaboration and improvements in some of those. Personally, though, I did look into some of the joint procurement collaborations because I did want to quantify those a little bit before I started recommending some of those to go forward.
Okay.
So specifically, the joint training and learning, the quantification of it I didn't do. I guess I could give you my observation about what I see from the learning activities, if from a qualitative point of view, is bringing together the N6 staff under similar training, so therefore they have a similar concept and applied practices, and also there's quite a large management group that get together on a regular basis to do a leader session and that kind of training. So it's instead of doing individual leader sessions for each municipality, they do it as a group, and I think that's an excellent networking and sharing opportunity. So more from a qualitative point of view, that'd be my observations from what I've seen on the joint training.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lang.
Councillor Abel, would you like Mr. Garvey to comment on that?
Oh, yes, please. I would like to.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to elaborate, what we're able to achieve when we pool the resources, we can actually do a couple of things. We haven't quantified it, but we can bring in higher quality training. So for our pre-management training, we can actually contract with a higher quality organization to come physically into space, like the Newmarket Civic Center. So it reduces travel time, it reduces expenses in terms of mileage. It also allows us to access better quality education and training. And that's true with all of the programs, not just the pre-management ones, but our technology. We are able to leverage existing technology, workshops, say if we need a specialized course on customer relationship management, and Newmarket has space, we can use their computers, we can use their training facilities, we can access and bring those resources to one spot as opposed to sending someone to Toronto or somewhere else in the GTA for that type of learning, which usually is more costly and takes more time and as Mr. Lang also spoke to, it gives us better networking opportunities. We're with our colleagues and we know each other, and so I think there's many levels of benefits.
Thank you, Mr. Foley.
Well, it was more or less I think what it leads to is better performance, efficiencies that can be found, and therefore a better use of our staff and going forward. So I just wanted to get some sort of background in the need for it. Thank you.
Councillor Gardner?
I would just like to add to that there was a very successful N6 library orientation on Saturday, and that's an example not with staff, but in another aspect.
Seeing no further questions of the delegate, I'd like to thank you for coming this evening. The item was approved on consent, so if I can just have a vote on the motion to receive. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Members of council, I identify at least two members in the audience who are here for specific items. I believe Mr. Weiss is here to see item number 2, which is the development of a sports plan. I believe also item 4, Jordan, I forget Jordan's last name, but Wiener is here for that one. Are there any other items of specific interest for members of the audience? Seeing none, can we just get a motion that we move items 2 and 4 forward? I know 2 would be first anyways, but Councillor Abel, Councillor Humphreys, all in favor? We will deal with item 2 first. And that was pulled by Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to put a motion to put this on the floor, please.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Maracus?
Great, thank you. On page 2 of the item, it mentions that the City of Mississauga reassigned a staff person to be the project manager, and staff are recommending a reassignment of doing the same here. Who will be handling the responsibilities of that reassigned staff member who will be taking on the project manager role, and would the job level be changed by moving it into a project manager role?
Mr. Gannon, would you care to comment?
Sure, Mr. Chair. I have done a reassignment of existing staff without any effect on service levels within the department. The staff person that was assigned to this project is Lori Anarello.
Councillor Kim?
Oh, and I'm sorry, you also asked it, and there are no budget implications.
And am I correct here in reading that by the fall of this year, both the sports plan and the parks and rec plan will be ready at the same time through Mr. Chair?
Mr. Kenny?
Sure, Mr. Chair, that's our goal. We hope to have both documents in place so that if there are recommendations that have an impact for the 2016 budget, that the document will be in front of council in time for approval and inclusion of any recommendations that council wish to consider for 2016 and 17 and 18 and from that.
Okay. And last question through Mr. Chair. So there's recommendation for $20,000 to be added to the consultant budget. What is the overall cost of the consultant then?
Mr. Johnny? Through Mr. Chair, the present budget that has been identified in the capital budget of this year for the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, is $75,000. So the $20,000 brings that up to a total of $95,000. And we're looking at combining the two because there are synergy opportunities, particularly when we get into the community consultation process, that we feel that we could more effectively address both documents at the same time during that consultation process, and then they will go divergent from that point. But the community consultation, as well as the stakeholder consultation, is a very important part of both documents.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. No further questions.
Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I may, Mr. Chair, ask a question to Mr. Downey as well. Just on that consultant, in the alternative to the recommendations, it talks about the sport plan is done in-house, and your obviously recommendation is that we don't do that. We move forward by just adding to the consultant's budget. So I just wanted you to explain why you feel, just in a bit more detail, that a consultant would be better as opposed to doing it in-house.
Mr. Downey? Through Mr. Chair, that was based on a conversation that we had with the City of Mississauga and the staff person that was part of that team. It was a very extensive team. Their sports plan was done in-house, and it took well over a year to do that sports plan. So we're concerned about the timing implications of this plan. We'd like to get it in place and before council prior to the submission of the 2016 budget. And the other issue is that we do have limited internal resources. So without looking at assigning or bringing on additional staff in order to address the workload, we feel it's best to bring in a consultant, short-term, focus their attention on this one project, and then move on from that.
Mr. Downey, would it be fair to also say that the opportunity to piggyback off of the Parks and Rec Master Plan, which was already approved, and the synergies there, was also a determination in moving that way?
Through Mr. Chair, yes, absolutely. I mentioned that previously, but I was trying to address the in-house issue. So if we did go in-house, of course, we go divergent from that, and we feel that we could not do the sports plan within the same time frame as the Parks and Recreation Master Plan is anticipated. And we feel those documents should come to council at the same time.
Councillor Earl?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm looking at the financial implications of $20,000 added to the budget for the Parks and Recreation Master Plan review. It's funded from the Master Plan Reserve. Is that a capital item on our budget? Are we adding $20,000 to our budget?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the master plan is actually funded from the cash in lieu, but it's my recommendation that we take this from the master plan reserve. But it is adding a capital budget item, but it has no impact on the mill rate. These are not tax dollars we're talking about.
I maybe need an explanation because I've heard that it's always the taxpayer that's paying. It's coming out of the same pocket somehow.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this comes from a reserve which is already established, and so we're not adding an additional cost to the 2015 budget that is presently being considered. The operational budget is presently being considered.
Thank you for the clarification.
Any further questions of council? Councillor Marcus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Mr. Downey, I was just curious, is it just a title change when it comes to our in-house employee that we're moving to the project manager?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. She's now supervisor of special projects as opposed to supervisor of fitness and aquatics.
Councillor Marcus, anything further?
No, I'll let it go for now.
Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We now move on to item 4, which was pulled, I believe, by Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not 100% sure I'd like to move this forward as is, but if someone else would like to, I can speak to it.
Councillor Abel, Councillor Tom.
Perfect, thank you so much.
The floor is yours.
Just a couple of questions through Mr. Chair to Mr. Romano. Was this ever brought before us at a planning session?
Excellent question, Councillor Humphreys, and perhaps I'll give Mr. Romuno a moment. I did note that this is one of those situations where it comes before us before going to Committee of Adjustment, and for those councillors who are new, it's a little bit of a variation, so perhaps Mr. Romuno can elaborate on why this is before us.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. Good question. Just to clarify, the application before council is simply a site plan application, so those type of planning applications don't require public meetings. In the past, council may have seen site plan and rezoning applications that go hand in hand, so if a rezoning is required, we certainly take that to a public meeting to seek input if it means there's a rezoning on the property. In this case, the site has been zoned for industrial commercial uses dating back to the late 90s, which permits specifically the commercial development, the restaurants, and it permits the development. So what's before council is approval of the site plan, being the site layout, location of the buildings, the look of the buildings. As I've mentioned in the report, though, as is very typical, whenever you're designing a development such as this, it's difficult to meet all of the existing zoning provisions to a T. So in this case, as part of our review, the design and review of the development, we've identified two specific variances that are required to the parking, reduction in parking, which staff can support, and I believe the other one is a reduction in number of loading spaces, landscaping requirements, and driveway access, and they will require the applicant to submit an application a variance application to the Committee of Adjustment, and we spelled that out in the report. But again, the use is permitted. That's why the application comes directly to council for approval of the site development.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that, Mr. Munoz. And I guess I'm just probably getting confused with another one we had, and it kind of got sent back, and so I knew it wasn't the same one, it's a different location. My only, so at this point, if it moves forward this evening, it'll still go to Committee of Adjustment for the minor variance request, and then it'll just, move forward, be presented back to council. There's no opportunity, some of the residents have an issue with some of the drive-through noise concerns. It's close to some residents across the street. Is this going to are we going to hear about it from the residents? I just understand the communication process. I know that this qualifies. There's no zoning changes. I'm just trying to put myself in the residents' shoes and say, how did this happen without us knowing about it? So I just want to confirm that and go from there.
Mr. Romano?
Certainly, again, through you, Mr. Chair. Again, I guess the response there to residents is that the site has been zoned since the late 90s. It has a industrial commercial zone which permits those specific uses, restaurants, and specifically a drive-through in this case. It was a site-specific exception that was dealt with by council back in '98. So that's been approved. The owner has those development rights, and he's simply submitting the site development application. So for the residents, the site has been zoned for close to 20 years.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And Mr. Munoz, just to I guess add to Councillor Humphrey's comments, that perhaps for those that weren't here at the end of last term, you might want to expand why there was some dialogue about another drive-through restaurant, and that application is considerably different because it was a rezoning, was it not?
Certainly, to you, Mr. Chair, correct. I think we're referring to the application just north of Bayview. That application did come before a public planning meeting, I think two public planning meetings, because it was a rezoning application. A rezoning application to permit a commercial development. Those lands still have the old historic rural zone, so the applicant needed to submit a rezoning application to permit specifically those commercial uses, a restaurant and a drive-through. And in that case, obviously, we proceed to a public planning meeting to consider the rezoning of the property and to receive public input and council input in that instance.
Thank you, Mr. Romano. Councillor Humphreys?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate, again, the explanation. It makes sense, and it's absolutely zoned for it. Just, the thing is, the other application that still needs to come back, the vicinity of this drive-through restaurant and the one that will be coming back, do we need to worry about that? It's very close, so just wondering in terms of the overall planning.
Mr. Romano, can you just stray a little bit? You make a comment about another potential application that should be judged on its own merits?
To you, Mr. Chair, yes, I mean, it's a separate application, similar type uses. That application is going to be before council at public planning meeting tomorrow night. I believe, yeah, it's tomorrow night, the 25th. And again, that is coming back. It's been slightly revised. It's coming back for some additional input as directed by council.
Any further questions by members of council on this item? Councilor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My comment is a general one, and I've said it once before, and maybe Mr. Minot wants to respond to it. Why wouldn't this go to the Committee of Adjustment first? Because when it comes to council first and we endorse it, I don't know, but I think that may influence the Committee of Adjustment to approve the variances, and I think that process is the wrong way round.
Mr. Muno, would you care to comment?
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Chair, as I mentioned to council in the past, I mean, it's my preference to, when we're dealing with a site development application in design issues, is for council to consider the merits of the site application, being the site layout and the look of the overall development and the built form, the elevations. There are always variants that are required, and again, the variances that we've identified in this case are, as we consider minor, reduction in parking, which is not unusual, and so it's my preference that council deals with the site approval first. The applications for the variances will need to be submitted by the applicant and considered by the Committee of Adjustment, on their own merits. Staff has indicated we can support the variances, and we'll do that when the formal applications come in, and the Committee of Adjustment will consider staff's report at that time and any other comments that are brought forward at that public meeting in front of the Committee of Adjustment. But I think it's important for council to deal with the site development first.
Thank you, Mr. Romano. Councilor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Minot. It always makes me nervous when we reduce parking standards, and it's by 26 spaces. So if there was a concern at council, through you, Mr. Chair, if there was a concern at council with respect to reducing the parking spaces, would council make that comment at this time?
Mr. Romano?
To you, Mr. Chair, yes, I mean, this is council's opportunity to provide input or comments on the overall site plan, the look of the building, and parking. Council can certainly make those comments with respect to the supply of parking at this time. I'll just add that we have reviewed the parking study that was submitted. We're satisfied with the supply of parking, notwithstanding there's a shortfall based on our zoning parking standard, and our traffic analyst has also reviewed that parking study and has concurred, and we have no objection to the amount of parking that's being provided.
Councilor Gardner?
Thank you, and I'm very glad to hear that. With respect to the change from 3 to 2 loading docks, would we know in advance what's going to be going into this development and therefore be able to judge whether the reduction would be a problem?
Mr. Romano?
Through Mr. Chair, yes, in this type of development, and we know the main, 3 buildings, the main user is, one of the main users is McDonald's. They've identified a loading space. There is one other loading space that's required for the other 2 multi-unit buildings. Our zoning bylaw for this zone, as it's stated with respect to loading spaces, requires a minimum of 1 loading space per building. as we see in a lot of developments of this type, smaller multi-unit buildings, they don't always necessarily need a loading space, so they've identified 2 loading spaces rather than 3, so hence the requirement to vary that standard to reduce it from 3 to 2 loading spaces. So we're seeing, the applicant, I've had a discussion with him, they have a number of users lined up, McDonald's being one, other restaurants, other office-type uses, travel, a number of different users, but again, the 2 loading spaces is sufficient for the 3 buildings.
Thank you, Mr. Romero.
Thank you.
Any other further comments from members of council? Councilor Abel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm glad we're having a bit of a dialogue, because it's good to understand that an official plan allows for rezoning, the rezoning takes place, then after that, before the site application comes forward, there's residential build-up, and so it would be up to the resident purchasing to look across the street and inquire, or have his realtor, or whoever's selling it, to provide that full disclosure of what's going on. And of course, the people that are on Bayview would know that it's a busy street with commercial all the way across. So it's different than what we saw in other areas where they look at a field and think, well, it hasn't been zoned, we know it's in the official plan, but when they come for the zoning, we can say, hey, we had no idea, which is fair and is allowed, and that's why it goes to a public planning meeting. So I'm quite pleased to welcome in a site plan application on an area that has been vacant. It fulfills the character of the zoning and the plan that we have there. We weren't to be approving any of the variances, but they have been addressed. The dependence on cars is something we're trying to create pedestrian and bicycles and people not being so dependent on cars. So it is a new sort of acceptance in urban areas all across North America that you don't have to get that full dependency on parking spaces. The philosophy is to create pedestrian and walking, and it is minor, and that was addressed. And as far as loading, and we see that in plazas at this stage throughout our community. So there's nothing unusual about that. But I'm glad they were all addressed at council's level. I think it's important because we're going to be considering many more developments as we go down the road where we are going to have to be involved and understand. So basically my comments. I always ask, and I think we have asked, these are great pictures that we see. Is that what it's really going to look like? So it looks brilliant. Lots of green there and plants. I noticed that it accesses, through you, Mr. Chair, only off of Patterson. It does not access off of Bayview, and also that it does connect with the plaza next door, which I thought was important. And I see a nod from the director. And I mention that because when we were looking at the LA Fitness, there was not that connection, because that developer said, we'd like to, but the existing, where Krabby Joe's is, said, no, we're not interested in doing that. So I think it's good that this sort of all fits in. It was just an isolated owner or developer in that case. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Abel. Anything further? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. We'll now move to item 3, and that was pulled by Councilor Humphreys.
I'll move as is.
Thank you. I'll get Councilor Tom to second it.
Mr. Chair, all I wanted to say is that I'm really pleased to see this, and what an honor that we have a scholarship award on behalf of John West as a memorial for young rural residents for the first year of post-secondary school. I think it's really exciting, and it looks like it's going to be in existence. I really support the town staff report on the enactment of this and how it will be moving forward in hopefully perpetuity. So very, very, very nicely done, and just a real honor to see this on the agenda tonight. Just want to mention that.
Thank you, Councilor Humphreys. Councilor Abel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's great that we have something to commemorate the contributions from our former Mayor John West. I do recall, I never had the pleasure of meeting him, but he is well renowned with former councillors that I have had the pleasure of talking with. I think most notably was his effort in getting the library, but there were several great initiatives that he saw through. He was a very strong leader. The scholarship is for $1,000 to 2 post-secondary, so I'm gathering that's $500 per person, through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Downey. Through you, Mr. Chair, no, it's $1,000 each.
$1,000 each. And that is sustainable with the bequest? Is there going to be some sort of, would the town be obligated interest rates are terrible. And I don't want to know the details, but it seems, is that a sustainable model that we're going to use through you, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Downey. Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't believe it's a sustainable model. It certainly can be for 15 years, but much beyond that, I'm not here to comment on whether it is sustainable beyond that, and can't tell what other donations might be coming into this reserve in order to assist with this program. But right now, it has got a 15-year window.
Thank you. And so maybe my comment at this time would be, I would be open to any sort of initiatives or ideas apart from donations to keep that going in perpetuity, I think is the word. I try to, I've never said that word. So in my mind, we're only going to be going to one school, or like often when we do scholarships, we have 5 high schools or 4 high schools that we divvy up. So this will be sort of, will we make sort of a conscientious effort to spread that around all the schools?
Mr. Downey? Through Mr. Chair, it is open to all schools, public and private. You need to be an Aurora resident. So much beyond that, we are not focusing on any particular school.
Thank you very much. I see the criteria.
Mr. Elliott, will any interest earned from these funds be kept in that reserve account so that if there's sufficient amount, we'll continue to utilize it beyond that 15-year period if the interest does make up that difference?
To Mr. Chair, absolutely. All of the town's reserve funds earn and retain interest.
In that interest?
At today's interest rates, I can't make any promises, though.
That's fine, thank you. Councilor Humphries, again?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, my apologies, and I didn't read that last line, it was only 15 years, so apologies. I just assumed that we're putting into an account that it could gain interest over the years. So hopefully we'll do that and we'll have some budget in there and continuing to, that's what I'm hoping. I assumed that's what we were doing, so.
If you follow the rule of 72, you need at least 4% to have it doubled in that 15-year period. That was for one of our audience members. Councilor Humphries, Gregory.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Downey. And it's wonderful that there is going to be this bequest and that John West is going to have his name on it for all of the work that he did for so many years for the town. Were there parameters given to us? Did it say 2 scholarships, $1,000 each? Or was it left to the town to decide how that money should be used?
Mr. Downey.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. West and I had several conversations prior to his passing, and so the amount was established by John, and so he wanted $1,000, he wanted 2 students, he didn't want the smartest, he wanted the person that demonstrated a multitude of attributes, and so that's where the $1,000 came from.
Thank you. And there was no talk of a partial repayment by the students so that we could keep this going?
Through you, Madam Chair, no. John was happy to see them get the $1,000 in an education.
Thank you. And also, staff are recommending a committee comprising of Town of Aurora representatives be set up. Could you give me an example of who might, through you, Mr. Chair, who might be on that committee?
Mr. Downing?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not quite sure. We haven't figured out the logistics of that at this point. It will be some representative of the community as well as staff. We're not quite sure whether we want to involve the school board at this point or not, but it will be a cross-section, as much of a cross-section as we can get, but we haven't worked out the logistics of who would actually sit on the committee at this point.
Thank you.
Mr. Berman? Nothing further? Any other questions from members of council? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Oh, sorry, Councilor Marcus?
Thank you, sir. I just had one comment. Just like to say that I had the pleasure, my wife and I had the pleasure of knowing Mr. West, and just I think it just speaks volumes of a man that did so much for this community, and to do this, after he's passed, to give this and continue his legacy, I think is just amazing.
Thank you very much. See no further discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Item 6 was pulled by Councillor Gardner. Councillor Gardner, would you care to put the motion on the floor?
Thank you, I would.
Seconder? Councillor Kim? Councillor Gardner, you have the floor.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Simonofskas, I guess. We're talking here about, with respect to the Aurora Family Leisure Complex. I'm just trying to understand how any deficiencies will work. Deficiencies, for example, well, maybe I won't give an example because there really are quite a lot. But if there are deficiencies and it's the contractor's responsibility, then they will correct those. And that will be within their budget?
Mr. Simonofskas, would you like to speak to the care of deficiencies?
Certainly, through Mr. Chair, that is correct. The contractor is required to complete all aspects of the project, and the architect in late February did a preliminary inspection of all the components and created a preliminary deficiency list. We have been adding to that deficiency list based on feedback from the community as well as other deficiencies that our staff are identifying. So the contractor's list is right now growing, but they're required to satisfy the contract and our requirements without any additional costs as part of the contract.
And what happens if there's, for example, in the area of the indoor track, it's very warm up there, so it's probably going to need some sort of a fan or some additional AC. So if that wasn't part of the contract, then that would be our cost to cover?
Mr. Simonofskas?
Certainly through Mr. Chair, some of the components of the project, such as the HVAC system, require commissioning and balancing and programming and testing, and these are ongoing activities. We're also going to see a shift when we go from the heating season to the cooling season. So these are things that the contractor does have to comply with regards to how the project was designed. If we find that we still have challenges in certain areas, then we need to do modifications to the programming or do modifications to the system. Those changes, we're not sure what those are right now until we see what happens through one complete heating and cooling cycle. This is not unusual. It's part of the challenge of the project. I guess the sensitivity of what we're hearing from the community is their expectation of walking into a building that's perfect. That's perfect.
Thank you. Follow-up. And so what happens with something, for example, the walking track in particular is pretty isolated, and there may be some security cameras required there. That's probably not something that was put into the contract. So where does that money come from if it's decided that's required?
Mr. Simonofskas, if you would answer this question, but I would ask that future questions be directed to the report in front of us. If you have other questions, perhaps maybe you take it offline with Mr. Simonofskas.
Certainly through Mr. Chair. Any opportunities for improving comfort, usability, functionality, efficiency, we'll address as we can if they weren't part of the original contract. Those typically come out of our operating budget. If they're larger in scale, we will request a capital project. We don't foresee any major changes, but we always look for opportunities to improve efficiency and building comfort. So as those opportunities emerge, we'll deal with them through operations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Marcus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Simonauskas. On page 5, I'm just curious, the change order group 8, that value, has that changed? Was that on there the last month's report, or is that new?
Mr. Simonauskas?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so Group 8 would be this report's group of changes. If there was an error in numbering, that's my apology, but typically we number each group based on the number from 1 to 7, as you see summarized at the top, and the Group 8 are the individual changes that have occurred, and then next month you'll see a Group 8 line in the top portion of that table. So yeah, those are the changes that have occurred since the last report.
And just as a follow-up through, Mr. Chair, where did that money come from?
Mr. Simonauskas?
Certainly through you, Mr. Chair. If you look on page 6, the line almost in the middle of the table, which is the contingency line, $603,000, the additional contingency that was approved by council in a previous report, and the total. So those contingencies are coming out of that upset limit of $950,000.
Okay. I mean, just as a follow-up, I'm just curious, when we speak of contingencies and budgets, capital projects, whose money is that? Who owns that money? Like, where does that money come from?
Mr. Simonauskas, if I understand correctly, you're wondering if that's part of the approved budget figure?
No, I'm just wondering who owns that money. Like, whose money is it?
Residents, but Mr. Simonauskas?
Well, I mean, through you, Mr. Chair, all funds come from our community, whether it's through the tax base for the operational costs, development charges, sale of land, in this case, we have for the Joint Operations Center. So these costs are based on a combination of capital and operating budgets, primarily capital because this is the capital component. There are elements of here which would have been funded from the operating budget, but all of it comes from our community tax base.
So, just to follow up, so it would be fair to say that it is the taxpayers own this money. It's the taxpayers' money.
Mr. Garden?
Through you, this project was funded from development charges and cash in lieu. So those sources are developers. The source, where the money came from, is a source, but the money belongs to the corporation of the town of Aurora. So,
sorry, just in essence, is the taxpayer, is it not?
it's technically the board of directors of the municipality, which is the group of councillors who represent the taxpayers, yes.
So in essence, the taxpayers' money. Thank you.
Other members of council for the first time? See, Councillor Abel.
Thank you. I believe Councilor Marcus is commenting on a comment in the paper, so it's important to know that we're all taxpayers if we aren't all property.
Point of privilege, Mr. Chair. I wasn't commenting on something from the paper. I was just commenting on something that Councillor Abel mentioned earlier when he spoke to cash in lieu, and that it's not the taxpayers' money, so.
That's a question. Councillor Abel, perhaps just rephrase it.
Development charge money is what funded the leisure complex, and which also funded the joint operation. That's what we're talking about here. The funding has all come from either DC or cash in lieu or the sale of land. And is there 10% that is assessed to the property taxpayer, or does any of this affect the property tax rate?
perhaps we can move away from the philosophical discussion and just stick to the report. Are there any specific details in the report you'd like Mr. Simonauskas to clarify?
I don't know why you privilege one counselor with a question to be answered and the
Ask the
other
same
not.
of Councillor Gardner to move away from that and stick to the report.
But you allow Councillor Maracus his question to be answered, and you're not going to allow mine.
Okay. If you like, you're asking about the 10%? Mr. Simonauskas, would you care to respond to Councillor Abel's question?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't know if I can. I might actually move it to Mr. Daly would like to speak to it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, with regards to what they call soft services, 90% of the Parks and Recreation facilities, whether they be parks or whether they be recreation buildings, are funded 90% through development charges, and then 10% has to come from another source. In this particular case, it came from cash in lieu of parkland.
So my question, it didn't come from the property, it wasn't assessed on our property tax.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is no impact on the property tax assessment with regards to the construction of this project.
Thank you. Now, can we give a definitive over how much we're over on, like we had the approved budget, and now that all these numbers, are we at a stage with the leisure complex to say, okay, we had to ask for more money, we used up all our contingency, and how much are we over? So if I'm looking on page 6 for the AFLC, it says approved budget $7,424,000. Well, that's what approved, and what we've actually paid out is $7,500,000. So are we? Well, how much are we over? And I know there's another concern about remediating the mold situation, but that has not been addressed as yet. Could I just get some sort of clarification there, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Simonauskas, is that budget variance figure at the bottom of that chart what represents what we're over on the approved budget of the project, or is it a different amount?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct, recognizing that a number of those items may never materialize. As an example, the contingency right now is $950,000. We're at $750,000 or so, and we are closing $762 right now, and we're closing in to the end of the project, so we may never reach. When we came to council requesting those funds, we were looking at all the risks that we had identified up until that point, thinking that if we're going to run into those risks, if they do materialize, what's the budget we should require? So we are, right now, we're trending under the new budget, and the worst case is exceeding the existing budget by $593 if everything actually materializes. But it doesn't look like we're going to get that high. So.
Senator, question, Councillor Abel?
If I could just sort of recap, when we went with this project, we asked for some additional money to retrofit the leisure complex, and that budget was added on to the original to make a total of 7.4, and we look like we're going to come in just over budget by 593, of which there's a figure that floats around. People use millions of dollars to make a point that this is extremely expensive and over budget. So I just thought this might be an opportunity for us to get a number so that we can be accurate. And when council members like myself are asked by residents, I have a figure that I can give them.
I think Mr. Simonauskas answered that question, that in the worst-case scenario, if all costs are realized, the over budget is 593,113. Over budget. That report. If all of those things are realized, if not, it would be less.
Thank you very much.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I may too, when we close the project, one of these reports will actually have a final number, and we'll make sure we clearly stipulate what the differences were at that time.
Absolutely. Councillor Tom, to the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm all over the report.
Thank you.
I think I'll go at it a different way, and I'll be really brief. At the start of the report, it says the original tender was for $6 million and change, and we're talking about whether we're $593 over what additional funds were laid out. So I would just say, I think most residents look at the original tender and then they look at what is costing now. So if I ask you what the current
tally is of what we have spent, including the original tender, I think that's probably a bit more of a useful number. So if it's $7,592,462, which it says down at the bottom, that would represent, $1.5 million over the tender price. Is that not correct? Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Simonowski?
Through you, Mr. That's not correct.
So we approved it? Right.
Mr. Simonowskis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's not correct. Okay. If you want to compare that 7.5 million, you're comparing to the 6.8 million under the previously approved column, which is total funding that was identified at that time. So the items that you see in the middle column are the additional items that we've identified that have been realized through the project that have added about $730,000 to the overall project. That's including consulting fees, inspections, and other miscellaneous fees that may not have been broken out in the original budget.
But if I may, if the tender was realized without use of a contingency is there for money that you have in place of things that come up if you don't plan for it. So the original tender was for $6 million. The contingency is there to buffer that in case there's things that arise, and it is approved by council, that's right. But the paper will say the original tender is for $6 million. That's what it even says at the second page of the report. That's all I'm trying to get at. I think that's when we have to go to the public, they see it originally cost $6 million, and now it's at $7.5 million.
Mr. Garvey? And I understand it may be better offline to go through it, but Mr. Garvey, briefly?
So the original contract price was $6 million. That's how much it cost to build the facility. So from that perspective, if you're looking at that, it's $6 million, the contingency. Those are the two numbers you look at. You don't look at anything else. You don't look at 7.5. It's $6 million plus of the contingency funds. That's the number that the bottom line, so that's $6 million and plus $950,000 at the top end.
I think the point Councillor Tom wanted to get across is that if nothing was spent on the contingency, that's what would be the original budget. But his point's been made. Anything further? Councillor Maracus?
Thank you. Please. No, yeah, definitely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Simonowskis, was the date of completion supposed to be October 2014?
Mr. Simonowskis, what was the original completion date?
That was the target date based on a tender.
Okay, and as a follow-up through you, Mr. Chair, we all got an email saying that we're doing a grand opening, which is great in May. I'm just wondering, is the facility going to actually be 100% complete at that time?
Perhaps I'll ask both Mr. Downey and Mr. Simonowskis to complete, because there was some exterior as well as interior components.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the contractors have been put on notice that that's the date that they need to be off-site. They've been put on notice and made very clear that that's their objective. However, they've been given many dates to deliver many aspects of this project, and they haven't been successful. So we are making every effort to make sure they are off-site for that date.
Mr. Downey, in terms of access, programs, etc., will everything be up and running by May 2nd, 4th?
Through you, Mr. Chair, through Mr. Chair, all the programs are going to be up and operational by that date. So it's not a program issue that is concerned, and I couldn't set it better than Umar. They are fully aware that we would like all landscaping and all exterior works done by May 2nd. Councilor Marcus?
Yeah, and I guess there's a comment and then another question. Comment that I guess a lot of the residents also have concerns when not just the budget, it's also the time frame. We're looking at a 7-month delay on it, and I think that was a little over the top for them to take. So just want to make that comment. Question I have in regards to the Joint Operations Center contract. I was just curious, I know we spoke of it before when it comes to the leisure complex with clauses within the contract, and I was just wondering, with the joint operations, is that one have a liquidated damages clause, or no?
It's not really in the report, but Mr.
Well, it's secret to the contract, right?
Sure,
So-
thank you. Mr. Simnoskas, is there a liquidated damages clause?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I have Councillor Abel, then Councillor Humphreys, but if it's okay with you, Councillor Abel, Councillor Humphreys and Councillor Kim haven't spoken yet, so I'll go to them first and then come back to you. Councillor Humphreys?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just a comment very quickly, with some of the concerns that we're aware of and the residents are bringing forth to us, can we ask that we get a communication on some of the top key issues?
That would be a great thing to bring under new business, since we're dealing strictly with the status report.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Siminoskis, could you give us an update on the project manager for the JOC? Has that person been hired, and how's he doing, or is she doing?
Mr. Siminoskis?
Yes, to you, Mr. Chair, that person has been brought on board, and he has attended several meetings, and he's proving very valuable to the project. He's providing a very supportive role for town staff, and a very keen eye on what's happening with the project. So it's right now, we're very happy with that additional resource that we have.
Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to get back to a comment that Mr. Garvey made, that for the leisure complex, it was $6 million plus $900,000 for contingency. We budgeted $6.9 million, and if we didn't use the contingency, would it be fair to say we came in under budget?
Mr. Siminoskis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the appropriate approach to take with regards to capital projects is to consider the contingency as part of the project target. And you establish a budget for a project based on managing the risks, because risks have dollars attached to them. So that's how contingency is established. With our procurement policy, we have a provision for a 10% contingency based on no further approval from council. A more mature approach in establishing a contingency, also a more expensive approach, is to actually assess all the risks in the project and then put a dollar value to those risks, and then say this is the contingency, and if everything goes wrong, the project will cost X dollars. That's typically the best way to approach it. Although I understand from a community perspective, when they see an award of $6 million in their mind, it's a $6 million project, and any dollar over is an extra. But the reality is you need to look at that contingency as part of the project, and if you come in within that, theoretically you're in budget because you've actually accounted for the risks based on those costs you've accounted for.
I think I understand the concept of contingency. Contingency could also be materials would go up. There could be labor and all kinds of things. You don't know what's under the ground. You don't know what's behind the wall. What I was getting to is that when you put in a contingency marker on a project, you're putting it there so that you have to consider the risk, and that's what we budget. We budget for what we think it is, and we put in a contingency because for budgeting reasons, it's prudent at our level that we put those in. So we budget with a contingency in mind. And always we would want a perfect world, but we know, especially in existing buildings, there's bound to be something that a contingency is going to take. So my question really was, is that if we budgeted with a contingency, it's prudent, and if for whatever reason these risks never materialize, and we only use 10% or 30%, we actually would be taking money that we had budgeted and put it back into reserves, and then would it be fair comment to say we came in under budgeted? That was my question.
And I would agree, yes, that is a fair comment.
Okay, thank you. And my last comment, Mr. Chair, is that perhaps in existing buildings, we build in, depending on its age, maybe a higher percentage, maybe 15% for a contingency, because we don't know what's behind the walls, especially if they involved condensation and matters of that nature in the future. And then new buildings, perhaps just whatever the industry norm is 10%.
Thank Thank you, Mr. Abel. I think it would be fair to say that those of us that have been through this process have learned from that experience and will bring up those questions should another project of this magnitude present itself. Anything further on the status report? The motion before us is to receive...
One more question.
Sorry, Councillor Abel, you've spoken twice. Is it going to be quick?
Yeah, it's just a question.
Certainly, go ahead.
What was the name of the contractor that did the Aurora Leisure Complex?
For the AFLC, sorry, I thought you were speaking to a different facility. It was Jasper Construction.
Jasper Construction.
Yes.
That was it, thank you.
Seeing nothing further, all those in favor of receiving for information? Motion carried. Item 7 was pulled by Councillor Gardner. Councillor Gardner, would you care to move the recommendation? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Maracus?
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair, a question on Table 1, page 2. The first company, Mead Electric. I just want to check the figures here, because in 2015, actually the 2016 price is less than the 2015. Could you say the reason for that? It's not all the other three, it goes up?
Mr. Simonopoulos?
Through Mr. Chair, yes, it did look odd to me when I first saw it too. That's the price they quoted, so.
So we won't tell them maybe it's a mistake?
If I may, through Mr. Chair, it is a unit price contract, so actually the work that they perform is based on how many times we call them out for various components.
Thank you very much.
Seeing no further questions, I'll now call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Approved. Next up is item 8. I believe that was pulled by you, Councillor Abel.
I'll move as is.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Tom? Councillor Abel, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Of course, I'm always keen on managing the waste within our municipality, and so any initiative brought forward, I'm always sort of aware of. I do notice that the heaviest article that I take curbside is my green bin, and we are charged on a weight basis. So through Mr. Chair, we are going to, if this voluntary program goes through, we would probably see a saving by employing us.
Mr. Simonopoulos?
Through Mr. Chair, that is correct. And in a previous report, I think last year I did identify a number. I think it was something in the order of $70,000 a year. But I haven't included any statistics in this number because really the intent of this pilot is to assess how much of an actual savings we get based on the participation rates. But there definitely would be a savings because that is the heaviest material and we do pay a premium for the collection of that.
Mr. Simonopoulos, you do mention a $100,000 figure on page 3. Is that not what one of the goals is?
Through Mr. Chair, that's correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, then, if this is something that is good for the environment, good financially for the municipality, and I think there's going to be some good to the individuals because you're going to have a good combustible compost to put in your garden, on your lawn, etc. And the awareness, and I fully endorse a volunteer program, and I'm hoping that that is shared at the table. So thank you for bringing this initiative forward.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. Councillor Maracus? Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's always great to do stuff for the environment. I'm just curious as to, through Mr. Chair, Mr. Sanasi, are the residents going to be properly educated on how to properly compost due to the fact that if you don't properly compost, you could end up with a rat problem? You know, there's other certain circumstances that could happen if you don't properly do it. So I was just wondering if we're going to be properly educating the volunteers and the residents.
Mr. Sinanosis, can you speak to the education program?
Certainly, through Mr. Chair, that is correct. There will be an education program as part of this, as well as monitoring and reviewing their progress throughout the pilot period, site visits to see how they're doing. And really, I think the key here is just trying to create an understanding that there's value in splitting your compost. When the green bins came in, it made it so much easier just to go to the curb. But really, if we do it right, it benefits both the homeowner as well as the municipality. So that's what we're looking for, is a new balance.
Thank you. Councilor Gardner? I'm sorry, were you finished, Councilor Marcus? Councilor Gardner?
Thank you. I think this is an amazing idea, and the figure that is quoted is that if we do this as a community, and there's only a 25% participation rate, we could save potentially $100,000. So this is a fantastic idea. It's going to cost us $2,500, our portion. And how much are we spending on advertising for that? Or is that coming out of another budget?
Mr. Simnoskis?
Through Mr. Chair, the region's actually participating primarily with the promotional side of it. They have a budget for that, and they're very closely linked to us with this, because the success of this project here the pilot success will be then used throughout the region as other municipalities want to take on this challenge. So they're actually leading the process. We're almost like a host with them, so they're picking up a large part of the cost as well.
Thank you. And a comment on the chart on page 2. At the very bottom, or close to the very bottom, is the idea of putting recycling bins at community mailboxes. I think maybe that's something that we could move up the list, as I can see a lot of garbage a lot of flyers being left at community mailboxes. I'd just like to add that there should be lids if we have that kind of a recyclable. Thank you.
Mr. Simnosis, those initiatives listed on that chart that Councilor Gardner is referring to is all part of that smart waste integrated plan that we've adopted. Perhaps just take a moment to speak to it for those new councillors that may be not familiar with it, because these initiatives were already all in place.
Certainly through Mr. Chair. So the Smart Living Plan, I'd be happy to provide a link to that document, which is on the regional website, was an initiative that was led by the region, participated by online municipalities. The Smart Living Plan focuses a lot of attention on the region's needs as far as processing and final disposal or reuse of collected materials, but there's also initiatives which these are part of that were identified by the local municipalities to help move towards the longer-term goal of reducing overall waste, as well as recycling and reusing and achieving the goals that they're looking to achieve in the longer term. If I may just add one other concept that was also two concepts actually that were very well supported by municipalities was one, any opportunities would go through a business case process wherein the pros and cons and cost benefits would be looked at both at the local and regional level, because something that we might do locally might save us money but actually might end up costing more in the processing end. So as long as the net benefit was there, then the initiative was supported. And the second concept is that each municipality would maintain their autonomy so that we would support the initiatives that made sense for our community, whereas they may be different for another community, but the shared learning would be for all to witness and then move forward in their own programs based on others' experiences.
Thank you, Mr. Simnoskis. Any further questions? Councilor Abel?
No, okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that's a great report, especially the page 2, and I wish we had that when we were talking about clear bags, but so far we're moving down the list. I noticed that we have this zero waste in schools for 2017, and I know it says Markham is doing it, but in my mind, this is the key for the long way is it'll be the youth that'll see the merit, and it'll probably just take a little longer moving that through, and that'll be a great educational source as they move through and bring those best practices forward. But it was Councillor Gardner that brought up something, and I never thought of, but for batteries, would we consider some sort of a bin at the community mailboxes to put those? So like I have I guess it's a coffee tin that I put my batteries in. But I'm waiting to do something with them, and I don't want to drive up to Davis Drive to unload them. And I'm thinking, you know what, every 2 or 3 months I go and collect my bills out of those boxes. I could go and dump my batteries at the same time. So, just a thought.
Would you want to ask a comment? Mr. Simonowskis, has there been any discussion about alternative drop-off bins for batteries, as Councillor Abel suggested?
Through Mr. Chair, we've been watching what's happening in the industry with regards to batteries, and one program that is of particular interest is what Durham Region is doing, where they have a twice-a-year separate bag that the collector picks up, and it's batteries and that type of material, and it's working quite well. I think it's been in place for a year and a half now. If council is interested in moving with that program, I would definitely support it. We could look at it as well and slot it in within that 4-year program.
As long as you've got something on the radar, and I appreciate that comment. I know electronic bins, one of the residents that was opposing the clear bag is glad that that didn't get employed because he doesn't want to take his electronics up to the waste cycles. Are we having sort of a regular pickup for those sort of items? Like once a month or every 2 months, put your TVs and your electronic components to the curb and they'll be picked up, or how is that going to I know it's a bit off topic, Mr. Chair, but if just a brief...
Would you care comment on e-waste pickup?
Sure, yes, Mr. Chair, we have e-waste events. I believe we have 3 or 4 a year. But by all means, I think we even have or if we don't have it in the public, we did have one at Town Hall. There are some... I won't say security issues, but there are issues, people might not want to leave their laptop in a public space where someone could come pick it up and potentially, so at least with the e-waste program, it comes in, it goes into a bin, and it's collected and hauled off. So, but yeah, definitely any opportunity we can get. One of the initiatives on here is actually collecting e-waste from multi-residential buildings, so make it easier for the multi-residential buildings to actually have an on-site collection rather than having them transport it. So that's for 216 for investigation, so.
Thank you. Councilor Gardner, then Councilor Mel.
I take my batteries to Home Depot. There's drop-off there, and I know there are other places that take batteries, and that wouldn't cost us any money.
Councilor Marcus.
I guess I just add to that, thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe Staples actually does take e-waste also, so.
It does.
Yeah.
Good news, Councilor, Mr. Simonowskis, nobody's asking about backyard composting. It's all with declarations and stuff, so. Seeing no further questions, all those in favor of receiving your information? Motion carried. Item 9 was pulled by Councilor Gardner. This is our annual report. Would you care to move the motion, Councilor Gardner?
Thank you, I would. I just have...
Councilor Marcus has seconded it. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just, I would like to know through Mr. Chair how a sampling error occurs.
Mr. Simonowskis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, sampling errors, because it's a human process, it can be contamination because of how the bottles are handled. It can be a problem with the drinking water itself. It can be how it's been transported if the bottle's not kept properly refrigerated or whatever the case may be. So it's essentially a human error / error in the chain of custody. They are very low, extremely low, and the processes for chain of custody and control of the samples and sampling procedures are very specific. So it's not like we have a lot of random errors happening.
Thank you. I would just like to congratulate you and your staff for such wonderful results.
Thank you, Councilor Gardner. Any other members of council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next up is item 11. Councilor Gardner, you pulled this one as well. Would you care to move the recommendation?
Thank you. I'll move it as is.
Do I have a seconder? Councilor Humphreys. Go ahead, Councilor Gardner.
Page 8, the chart on page 8 at the very top. The action item, staff has identified a recurrence of adverse samples, And then under action completed details, staff reported no issues. I don't understand how that goes together.
Mr. Simnauskas, can you speak to it?
Certainly through Mr. Chair. So that was identified in our management review meeting, and essentially when you have an adverse sample, there's a requirement, a mandatory requirement to resample and retest, and that's just verifying that the resampling was fine. There were no issues with adverse. So it's just a completion, a paper trail based on the results of that incident, and closing the loop to then identify in that case that everything was fine after the retesting.
Councilor Garvey?
Thank you.
Other members of council? Seeing none, all those in favor of receiving? Opposed? Motion carried. Number 14, and that was pulled by Councilor Kim. Would you care to move the staff recommendation?
Yes, I'd like to move this forward, please.
Councilor Humphries seconded. Councilor Kim, the floor is yours.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Simnauskas, which of the other N6 communities have come on board the LED program with the said consultant?
Mr. Simnauskas?
Through you, Mr. Chair, maybe Mr. Garvey can comment. I believe Stouffville has started a program. I know Vaughan has done some pilots with some limited changeouts, or more of a testing program that they did maybe 5 years ago. We would be the first, if Stouffville, depending on where Stouffville is in the process, we would be the first to proceed in York Region, to my understanding. I haven't heard from any of my colleagues that they're proceeding with this program.
And perhaps, Councilor Kim, we can come back to that question when Mr. Garvey rejoins us.
And my second question is, I see some performance figures, but I don't see any numbers in terms of what kind of savings that we're going to be experiencing over the lifespan of the LED lights. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Mr. Simnauskas, I do believe in the report it does talk about a payback period. You can speak to that?
Situation 8?
Certainly through Mr. Chair, so on page
9.
Page 9, thank you. The table that's in the page, the middle table speaks to LED project life statistics. You have a projected lifetime savings of $8.9 million. That's over, I believe, a 20-year period. There is roughly a 10-year payback, and the annual, if you look at it from an annual perspective, now the thing with the forecasting is you're looking at trying to incorporate increases in energy costs, which is a challenging variable, but we're looking at an annual savings in dollars, annual electricity costs of about $221,000 in savings, which is almost half of our current hydro costs. So if you looked at the forecast year for LED light is 20 years, that's the life cycle, if you want to call it, as far as what would be expected. So you're looking at $4 million in savings over that period. So.
Okay. And final question, it seems like from what I've read, Real-Term Energy, it pretty well have the market, through you, Mr. Chair, they seem to have the market in consulting and the implementation of this type of project. Are there no other competitors in this field? What I've read on the internet, it seems like they've been implementing this throughout Ontario, and they're the premier consultant in this regard. So I guess there's no other competitors, am I right?
Mr. Simnauskas, perhaps you can speak to that, maybe include a little bit of LES, that whole RFP process.
Yes, certainly through Mr. Chair. If I can refer you to page 5 with the table and specifically with some of the text in the report. AMO, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, has a separate branch, local authorities services, which is a branch or an organization, it's essentially a corporation, that is put into place to look for efficiencies and opportunities to support municipalities for cost savings, service level improvements, and the like. So they actually initiated a process in which they facilitated two exercises. One was the selection of a solution provider, which was done through like an interview process, and the second was a tendering process for the actual manufacturer of the products. So Real Term Energy was selected as the solution provider that would be supporting the program that AMO was offering to all municipalities. So from that perspective, they have been selected based on a competitive process that's consistent with what we would require for our programs. The other aspect that's important to recognize is that there are a lot of players in this market, and it's a very dynamic market. Some players are more reputable than others. We did consider last year, there was a report in the fall of last year, I believe it was prior to the election. We had a report last fall, prior to the election, that we were actually looking to do exactly what you're asking, go out to the market and actually find our own solution provider. And then coincidentally, in November, LAS had actually just re-tendered their supply contract and had revised pricing, reduced pricing, which is what our concern was, because their tendering process was a year old, and because the market is so dynamic, we thought we could get a better deal. Well, it turns out in December, they had just renewed everything again. So basically, we're getting the best products or the best pricing that we can get from the market, because if you consider any bidders for that program are looking at all municipalities. It's not one, it's not the town of Aurora, because LAS represents all municipalities. So from that perspective, we looked at the retendering, and we looked at the cost savings potential, as well as the effort to go through an additional process internally, and not having the expertise internally to actually do the evaluation in a wholesome way. You need to also consider when LAS was doing their reviews, they had a panel of industry experts that were actually supporting them in the evaluation process. So there's a lot of knowledge and expertise behind how this model was created, the org chart that you see on that page, and we will benefit by leveraging that experience. They are closing into 100 municipalities being signed on with this program. When we first brought this forward to council, we would have been one of the first if we had proceeded a year ago. That's how fast this program uptake is occurring. It's actually occurring so fast that they're committing to actually complete the program by the end of the year, but there's a lot of municipalities actually coming on board this year, and they're concerned with their capacity to deliver based on the interest with this program.
Thank you, Mr. Simnoskas. If I may, I'm just going to go to Mr. Garber to answer your question with regards to if any of our N6 neighboring communities have also engaged in this.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Richard-Stogo has just recently completed a project with LAS and Real Term, and they've achieved significant savings on their energy costs. The other municipalities, Newmarket is using Honeywell as an ESCO, and they have a broader program looking at all their facilities and moving along those lines. The other municipalities are not as mature as we are in this process.
Anything further? Councillor Tom? And then I have Councillor Gardner.
My question was answered. Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, and I'm not sure really how to say this correctly, but if I look at the bottom of page 6, the intent is to retain Real Term Energy to do an energy audit, and if the audit is 65% or better, then we would follow through with a contract which would involve Real Term Energy. So they're doing the energy audit, they're controlling the results, and if the results are good, then we're giving them the contract. They're just, something about that is just a little strange to me.
Mr. Simnoskis, would you care to comment on that? And just to be clear, that 65% is to verify that there's a net energy savings of 65%.
So a net energy savings, but the people that are going to do the energy audit are going to get the contract, so.
Mr. Simnoskis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the arrangement with LAS is one that Real Term does the audit, and the audit really is, audit may not be the best word, it's actually a detailed design of the street lights for the entire town. And by going to that level of detail, which is why there's a cost to the initial design, is that they had to take each fixture, do a photometric analysis of each fixture, design the fixture, figure out what the lighting requirements are for each lamp pole in the entire town. And then from that, they get an accurate assessment of what the savings truly are, what the costs are going to be, and then they come back with a financial report, which would be the next step to this council, saying, okay, here's the financial results. Our energy savings will be this, down to, essentially down to the watt, and our savings will be this, based on the forecast. The third component, which is also a very valuable piece that Real Term provides, is the negotiation with PowerStream, because PowerStream has to then agree to giving us a rate reduction on the savings that are perceived. And another element that's important to recognize where Real Term plays a role is in securing the OPA incentive, which is about $434,000 for this project, which is close to 20% of the cost. So although Real Term is playing what may be perceived as a self-fulfilling role or a self-serving role, their end goal, based on their service agreements with LAS, is to facilitate the delivery of energy reduction and savings to municipalities in such a way that the program actually achieves real results at the end of the day.
And would it be fair to say that along the way there's some checks and balances to ensure that the information is accurate?
Through you, Mr. Chair, on page 6, we laid out a number of checkpoints that we need to go through with regards to this program, and the feeling was to include this in the report just to give council a sense of the entire process. So it's not basically sign them up and see you in a year. There's a lot of oversight, as much as we can provide as the owner. I mean, we don't have the technical expertise, but we can manage the project from the perspective of the owner. So that's our role.
Did Mr. Simnoskis answer or address your questions?
Thank you very much, and I'm definitely in favor of this.
Councillor Abel, then Councillor Marcus.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, I think it was 2 items before with the maintenance for the lights. We're paying $110,000. When we see this fully employed, obviously, I think you made a remark that would be significantly less as saving as well. So another reason for, as we look down the road, not just energy, but maintenance on the product as well.
Mr. Simnoskis.
Certainly, through Mr. Chair, that is correct, and I did mention in the report that was just before council earlier that contract is a time and materials basically contract. So if this lighting retrofit was to occur, say, this year, then their workload would drop off and our costs would obviously drop off. That will be factored into the final analysis as well as part of Real Term's financial audit statements, because they have to factor in all costs related to the project.
And it's a comment, Mr. Chair, but the need for N6 and for our municipality to find savings, and we know that energy costs in Ontario are the most expensive in North America. It is imperative that we find ways to reduce our consumption of energy, and also, if it's green, to go along those routes as well. So this is a great initiative. I know we've had this on the books for a while, along with electric cells on the roofs and stuff. So this blends all into the fact that we are looking at ways to mitigate pressures on our taxpayers.
Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Simnoskis, are we going to be, once this is implemented, are we going to be looking at doing LED lights for our facilities in all town buildings?
Mr. Simonoskis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we actually do now. We did a conversion of all the exterior parking lot lighting facility, at the facilities last year. A number of the interior lighting have been changed. A number of the lights in the new AFLC project are LED, so we are doing that systematically.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. That brings us to the end of items for discussion. We're now on to new business. I'll start on my right this time with Councilor Maracas. Do you have any new business or general information?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, just one item. I've had a couple of residents just ask about whether we've pay out a consulting fee for when it comes to the clear bags, and I was just wondering, I wanted to squash those if there were rumors, and I was just wondering through you to Mr. CEO, did we ever pay any type of consulting fee? Because I just don't want it getting out that, because there's a lot of people saying that we did, and if we didn't, I just don't want it.
Perhaps I can direct that to Mr. Simonoskis. I think you're referring to Vision Quest?
Yes.
Mr. Simonoskis?
I'm sorry, just a question.
Was there a consulting fee paid to Vision Quest for the clear bags?
Through Mr. Chair, yes, there were fees paid for the services that they provided through last year.
Okay, do we know the amount of that?
I believe it's around 15,000. I think we had it in the last report, but I can confirm that and send an email to council if that's something of interest.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Riddle?
I'm sorry, was it 15?
15.
Are there any other costs associated with that initiative that we put forward?
Through Mr. Chair, no direct cost, just staff time.
Just staff time. Thank you very much.
Any others? Councilor Humphries, now's the time.
That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just an ask of staff, if possible, that we can get and I think it's in the works, a communication on some of the general issues of concern at the leisure complex and what the actions are going to be in the timeframe for resolution. A lot of it is heat concerns, too hot in certain areas, and things that can be looked at. And some other smaller things, large things that are not making residents really happy. Is there any way that we can get kind of a list, an ongoing list on what the concerns that we're noting, what we're doing about it, and when they might get resolved? I know May 2nd is a new opening, but can we get something like that? We're getting quite a few here and there. And when I'm out, I get quite a few people asking me, what are you doing about this?
Perhaps I'll go to Mr. Garvey, since communication falls under his department with regards to, we've all seen the emails and the questions and thoughts about how it's being addressed.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have a standard communication that goes out. In terms of tracking the issues and ideas that we see, they all are centralized with Philip. And so in terms of compiling a list and an action plan, maybe I'll refer that to Mr. Simonoskis.
Through Mr. Chair, my preference would be to look at this commissioning phase as a standard commissioning phase. I can appreciate the challenges that some of the residents may feel, but frankly, we still get complaints in this building, whether it's too hot or too cold. So some of those things don't go away. I think what I'll do is I'll speak with Philip as to some of the bigger issues and some of the things that we can address. My hesitation with a list is that the issue is that the building has challenges and we're dealing with them, and we can identify some of the bigger areas. But the reality is, and with any operation of this type, there's a period of commissioning, and it's like when you buy your house and the walls start cracking and you have to deal with it. We can't predict, and to track every complaint isn't really going to be efficient use of it. I can maybe look at a conversation with Philip and Mr. Garby and Mr. Kemp to look at what messages make sense and in a way that's going to be effective and helpful for residents without bogging us down with minutia. And that's where I'm kind of.
No, absolutely.
That's fair.
No, that's fair. Absolutely, Mr. Chair. That's absolutely just some of the larger areas. We know that this is. We're working on it. We're working on it, and you'll see some differences soon. Not a detailed list, but just a couple of the bigger items. That would be great. It would help us a lot. Keep people understand that we're getting there. As we're.
Thank you, Councillor Humphries. Councillor Tom? Councillor Kim?
Yes, I'm not sure who to direct this to, maybe it's Mr. Simonauskas or Mr. Garvey, but I've had a couple of emails and a call about the location of the Canada Post mailboxes. So is there, they want to know, a couple of them wanted to know whether there was a remediation process, if there was no agreement in terms of where the mailbox,
I think I'll direct that to Mr. Ramuno. I know Mr. Ramuno has recently sent through a number of emails that spoke to the process and the limited involvement we've had. Mr. Ramuno?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. Our staff has been in contact with Canada Post. They have set up a website, and they have identified the location of the future community mailboxes throughout town. They've also set up a service ticket process where if there are any complaints, residents are asked to email Canada Post. But again, our role in the municipality is limited with respect to the location of those mailboxes. Canada Post has gone out, they've done their own surveys throughout town, and they've already done their own design and location of those future community mailboxes, so we don't have, town staff has limited opportunities in where those sites are located. Canada Post has already made the decision, and they'll be proceeding to install those community mailboxes in the future. But they do have a website set up to receive any complaints, and they will be responding to any complaints that they receive from residents, and they are tracking those.
And Mr. Ramuno, to that point, I believe it was in your email that they have a mandate to use the municipal allowance for the setup of those boxes, correct?
To you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. They made that clear to us that they do have that mandate to locate those community mailboxes within our right-of-way. They only check with our municipal staff to ensure that there's no conflict with respect to any underground utilities that we may have in a particular location. But they were adamant, they've got the mandate to use our municipal right-of-way to locate their community mailboxes.
Thank you. Councillor Kim, does that answer your question? Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank Mr. Ramuno for the memo he sent to council. I did talk, I had a lengthy correspondence with someone that had what I thought were legitimate concerns. It reminds me of the cell towers. It's a federal idea. They say they consult, they take it off, and there's really, our role is very limited. I did phone the 1844 number that you gave us to check out the ability to field, and it was a bit of a script, I thought. The person to direct your call to is our MP, Lois Brown, and she's got a lot of calls from residents in Aurora Newmarket concerning it, and I imagine almost every federal MP likewise. Mr. Chair, I wanted to bring up to our attention that someone had complained about activities at the skateboard that were becoming, and if I could ask through you, I had a very similar situation that was addressed in the summer at Hickson Park, where they have a skate park, and it was due to conduct of us, and there was a complaint. And I would just like to ask through you, Mr. Chair, if Ms. Van Leeuwen could kind of recap that matter.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have received a couple of complaints of activity at the AFLC skate park, some loitering, perhaps some inappropriate use of alcohol and drugs. This is a police matter, and as such, by law is in the process of contacting YRP and arranging for additional patrols in the area, as well as identifying a contact for the residents to call when they observe or witness that type of activity. So if we didn't make contact today, it'll be sometime within the next couple of days.
A follow-up. I would make note that this is a very similar complaint to the Hickson Park, and Ms. Van Leeuwen did the exact same response, and it worked very well. Bylaw went by a couple of times, the police did make their patrols, and I followed up with the resident, and she said it worked. That was enough. So I hope it's just as effective, and I thank you very much for following up and getting back to the resident, and I'll follow up in a day or two.
Thank you. Seeing nothing further, we'll move towards closed session. Can I get a motion to move into closed session to read the appointment of members to the Heritage Advisory Committee? Following adjournment. Councillor Tom, Councillor Humphreys. All in favor? Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Abel? I don't see a seconder, so I guess we're going to stay here. No, sorry, Councillor Tom. All those in favor? Perfect, thank you. Thank you for